And welcome into the Value Picks episode for the 2021 season with the Fantasy 4-Packs. I'm your host, Ian Power, joined as always by Matt Vitale, Frankie Santiago, coming to you all, honestly, only a few days after we did our bus episode, which feels weird for this time of year, but
they're not supposed to know that. We're going to upload this later.
It's a secret of movie making. You're giving it up.
We're filming this a few days after our bus episode, which is weird for this time of year because usually we're a little bit slower of our release schedule. So, bonus content for you guys. Woo-hoo. Well, not really bonus content. It would have came out eventually anyway, but
Spoiled it.
Anyway, because of that and because of the time of year it is, there isn't really any new news to do today.
Not much.
Things like Aaron Rodgers will eventually report training camp unless he won't. Or like, Hunter Henry had one drop last year. You guys already knew that because you could see his stat line, but we're reporting it anyway because it's July and we have nothing else to report.
Yeah. Further, once again, they asked Saquon Barkley, like, "Hey, you playing?" He's like, "We'll see." So exactly what we said.
Like, I feel pretty good, but I also might not be there week one. It's like, tell us a yes or a no.
Yeah. They're just like, "Do you have any update?" He's like, "We'll see." It's like, great. That's what we had before.
I don't have an update. Do you guys have an update?
Not an update, but Bob did have a good point that he made. Dallas should try and get the ghost of Tom Landry, to somehow coach the team, and will probably do better that way.
I think if you just keep your quarterback healthy and...
So you're suggesting that the Dallas Cowboys could benefit from necromancy?
Yes.
Oh, well, that's fair. All of their best players were in the past.
You can quote it. Air quotes.
All right. Well, like I said, we don't have any actual news to go over today. I don't think, unless the Cowboys are, attempting to summon the ghost of Tom Landry in that abomination of a stadium right now. But outside of that, I think we're good to jump straight into the picks today. If you guys have no issues with it, I'll lead us off because I want to talk about a guy that I didn't think was still going to be in the NFL at this point, but look at that, he's on my values list because I've given up trying to predict the end of Tom Brady. It'll happen one day when he's like 57 years old and gets tackled so hard that his leg comes off or something, and he's forced to retire.
We kind of talked about this a little last show. The guys who kind of stay in the NFL too long and they have that terrible season.
Yep.
Fortunately for Brady, I don't think he's going to have that season.
I do.
I think he's
Father time comes for everyone, Frankie. Peyton Manning threw 55 touchdowns one year, and then the next year looked like crap.
Yeah, like I said, we all saw the last year on the Patriots. It didn't look great. It wasn't awful. It wasn't like, last year of Manning bad, but he just went out and got a talented team, and look at that, he's back to elite status.
But I'm not here to talk about Brady's inadequacies today because he's currently going as the QB 10 in drafts. And it's really hard to ignore that given his body of work, the team around him, other players that are going in fantasy drafts this year. I mean, last season was the QB 8. So obviously he moved to Tampa Bay, brand new offense for the first time in his career.
No off season.
Yeah, no off season. Bruce Arians has a traditionally very difficult QB system to learn. Everyone seems to struggle under him year one. In comes Tom Brady, who struggles for the first 9 games of the season. It really seemed to be figured out in week 10 on. But even with that struggling, he still had a very good year last year. I think it was like 4,633 yards, 41 touchdowns, 12 picks. That's nothing to sneeze at right there. It's an excellent season. And like I said, he did that with having to learn a brand new season or a brand new offense, with no offseason, with wideouts that were hurt or inconsistent. Godwin only played 12 games. Mike Evans, he played all of them, but it didn't feel like he did. He had 5 games where he had 4 or less targets. So, one was doing a disappearing act for a third of the year, and one was hurt. News also broke he had a torn knee all last year. I think this guy is being criminally underrated in what should be a excellent offense, one of the best in the league, with a system that he now has a full offseason under his belt, a brand new surgically repaired knee. Hopefully his receivers can stay healthy this year. I don't see how he's going as far back as he is. I mean, if you look at how his last season broke down, last year almost half his production came after week 10. If you extrapolate that over the course of the year, he ends with like 500 more yards, an extra touchdown, one less pick. Like that's a huge difference. That's not projecting any improvement into his game plan. If you just take that and post it into this year, he's over 5,000 yards. That's massive. Because I think he's being just way overlooked in favor of sexier names like Kyler Murray or Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson or Russell Wilson, despite the fact that he could easily put up the same production that they will, but you get him 5 rounds later. I mean, who would you rather have? Kyler Murray and Corey Davis, or Tom Brady and, I don't know, Adam Thielen?
Well, I mean, Thielen's near and dear to my heart, so.
Okay, fine. Tom Brady and Robert Woods.
Robert Woods is another near and dear to my heart.
Tom Brady and Cooper Kupp.
Cooper Kupp, I kind of like that guy.
I like, yeah.
But anyways, yes, to your point.
You see my point. It's like you compare a elite wide receiver with a guy who's going almost in the double-digit rounds, QB 10. That's insulting for the upside that he can put up. I mean, I love me a running quarterback, but like, what's the point of taking one of them when you can get Tom Brady in almost the 10th round? I mean, he's going after Jalen Hurts, a guy who he has like 5 games under his belt.
Yeah, this is what I was talking about. Like, slowly, people are kind of catching on to the when the whole industry was shouting late QB, all of the QB prices were depressed. So
Sure.
the guys who were more expensive were actually more valuable because you were getting them in the 7th and 8th round, maybe even 6th, like with Kyler last year. But now they're preaching quarterback early, get these runners, get them now. So now all your league mates are going to take these guys early while you are just sitting there picking up all these skill players who keep dropping to you. And then you and maybe 1 or 2 other guys in your league who don't have quarterbacks, you and a couple other guys, just get to watch all these quarterbacks dance down the draft because the guy who has Pat Mahomes isn't picking up Brady. The guy with Kyler Murray's not picking up Brady. So Brady's just going to fall. So even though he's the 10th quarterback, he's going to drop into those double-digit rounds.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think it's a no-brainer. I mean, and I love my running quarterbacks. I'm still torn between maybe trying to get one that falls a little bit if like Lamar or Josh Allen or Russ or one of them just kind of slips in actual drafts that I'm in. But as of right now, I'm looking at this QB landscape, and Tom Brady's heading the pack for me. But to throw a couple honorable mentions in there, it's like Aaron Rodgers, Ryan Tannehill, and Matt Stafford are all going in roughly the same range as him, and all of them have 40+ touchdown upside, 5,000+ yard upside. Like the Tom Brady, but like also just that group of QBs right there presents incredible just passing volume upside late in drafts, and it allows you to really hammer the skill positions early. I think he is a slam dunk steal.
Yeah, and actually, it's funny that you brought up Ryan Tannehill because I have all the same points to say about him for the most part. And
yeah, I know you're gonna be talking about him in a minute.
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny that he's going 1 pick behind. I mean, we just talked about how this is kind of like the magical land of the guys who are gonna fall to you because you're gonna. If it's me, I'm taking that skill position player in the 3rd round, 4th round, 5th round, and I'm just gonna wait on my quarterback. I might not get the cream of the crop, but there's enough that's down here where it's like you can kind of pick and choose how you're gonna build your draft based on how other people are drafting.
No, absolutely, and like I said, ultimately for me, I think the biggest difference is that it comes down to QB scoring. The difference in scoring between even a Pat Mahomes and a Tom Brady isn't going to be as great as the difference in scoring could be with a Mike Thomas or Adam Thielen or either of the Rams receivers or Kenny Golladay. Like all of them present just such more extreme upside over their late round counterparts. You're picking guys that you hope get targets. That it's like this to me is one of the biggest value inefficiencies in this year's draft process. To me, is that these quarterbacks with limited mobility are getting straight up ignored for the sexier names that can run for 500+ yards easy. And while getting rushing upside with a QB is important, it's not going to help you if you overpay to get the rushing upside.
Yeah, I think that one thing I'm looking for with both of your takes that you're going to be talking with what Frankie will be talking about, what you just already said, where these running quarterbacks are going right now, I really want to see is real drafts start happening and more accurate ADPs start coming out. Do we see the running quarterback sneak up because everyone's going in higher, pushing their chips in more to get these guys, or do advice like this and people talking about these late round quarterbacks, does that depress the price and then all of a sudden those running quarterbacks become valuable again?
I mean, I've noticed that Kyler has been creeping up. Mahomes is already in the third. Kyler's creeping into the fourth. So it seems like as the season gets closer, that the public sentiment is leaning towards pushing them higher because it's the quick, easy thing to do, and a lot of people in the industry are pushing the rushing quarter, and for good reason. But a lot of people in the industry are pushing rushing quarterbacks, and when groupthink or public sentiment gets a hold of that, it's going to take them to a point where I'm not comfortable drafting them, in my opinion.
Yeah.
All right, Vitaly, take us away with your first one. Who are you talking about?
All right. I'm going to talk about another amazing offense, third in scoring, actually. And I'm going to talk about their running back, who that position went woefully underused last year. That would be the Buffalo Bills of the AFC East and Mr. Zachary Moss. This guy is going almost at pick 100 overall. He's the running back 39. 39. He's barely a running back 3 in most people's eyes right now, and he's on one of the best offenses. He is getting his first full year, as we were talking about Brady in the last, when you were talking about him, no off season. Yeah. He's learning the NFL for the first time, and he's got to do it in a COVID season.
Sure.
He was drafted in the 3rd round, and scouts are talking about this kid was in 1 or 2 years he should be taking over the job, which seems to be tracking. Devin Singletary is becoming less of a factor. Moss was starting to take over towards the end, and his production was starting to creep up towards the end. And you look through there, the guys, when he was having his good games, it wasn't like he was just beating up on a Jacksonville or something like that, or Cincinnati. He won 2 of his best games, Denver and the Patriots. Definitely quality defenses that he was running against. Finishing his season, averaging over 4 yards a carry. When I look at all the intangibles with this kid, how he produced last season, yes, he was injury prone. That was one of the things coming out of the draft that people were worried about, but the skill was there. The talent, scouts are talking about how he's got this ability to catch, which if he's got that, that's another tool in his arsenal that he didn't get to show off last year. And I think with a year of learning routes, learning his timing with the quarterback, who's also maturing, I could see a very clear route to him taking over this job in earnest and really carving out a spot for him. And, maybe he doesn't explode up to being an RB1, but if you get a guy at the 100th pick in your draft who becomes an RB2, like just a lock-in either flex guy for you, or if you're going with a light RB strategy or you got forced into it because of the drought that is at the top, and you have to take Zach Moss, and you're between him and some other guys. Maybe J.K. Dobbins doesn't have a great start or something like that, or David Montgomery, like one of these guys who's later, who's usually more a value pick. Zach Moss, I could see a path where he steps up in the starting role and gets you quality, consistent running back numbers on a great offense that's pushing for a Super Bowl. Like, when you look at everything that he did over this whole thing, it points to me that this guy should be creeping up like other 3rd round running backs who haven't fully taken over their backfields yet. He's just being left in the dust.
No, I mean, I think my biggest reason for why I'm not a Zach Moss truther, and I understand the case for the value for him, I think one of the reasons why I'm not really a Zach Moss truther is that it seems like the Bills are transitioning to be more of a throwing offense. Mm-hmm. And I like him more than Devin Singletary, but I don't want a piece of a running game on a team that doesn't really want to run the football anymore because they want to, or not run anymore, like not run it as the focal point of their offense. I don't want a piece of a team that's going to have 2 running backs of essentially equal skill if you look at how they're performing. There isn't a huge disparity between the numbers Singletary's putting up and the numbers Zach Moss is putting up. Usually, when you're targeting somebody to be a second-year breakout, you want to see them having actually done something in their first year. And Zach Moss looked fine, but he looked kind of pedestrian. Like, he didn't look good enough that I'm like, wow, this is definitely his job going into this year. And to me, Zach Moss is just going to end up being someone that's going to take up space on your bench, and then you're going to drop him in like week 6 when he's still just vying with Singletary for yardage, and they're both getting like 11 carries for 56 yards a game.
I think the main problem with me with Zach Moss is, again, I can see, similar to him, I can see the case for the value, and I do like him better than Singletary at this point because Singletary's been disappointing.
It's easy to like him better than Singletary. Singletary sucks.
It's
But
just
but his numbers look okay enough compared to Moss's that I don't think it's gonna matter on the field.
well, it's not even the numbers thing for me. It's that the offense, what they are transitioning to a running, they're transitioning off of being a running team, and when they do run the football, they don't want to run through their running back. They want to run through Josh Allen. That's my main thing is that you want to the team doesn't want to use their running backs.
That is the other big issue there is that they technically have 3 running backs in the team because Josh Allen runs plenty.
Right.
And when it comes down to it, the only reason we like J.K. Dobbins and Lamar Jackson is because the Ravens rush more than anyone in football. So we know the volume's there. The volume just isn't there to support a guy like this in fantasy. I don't hate the shot. If you're gonna call your shot on it, fine. But I'm not in the Zach Moss believer camp.
That's fine, and that's what I noted is the number one issue is opportunity. Because I think if you just give him opportunity, if he gets opportunity, everything else should fall into place. And with that, with a quarterback who's not yet onto his actual big QB deal, who's trying to push towards that, I could see him taking scheming up a few less plays to keep his body safe. Because he's been punching in basically 8 touchdowns a year since he started, and the more times you're running out there, the more times you take shots. Granted, he does have a bigger body, so he can take those shots, but we see that could wear out a quarterback fast. And like I said, this could be a year where he takes that back a little bit. And I could see them, who they were already down at 20th in the league in rushing. I could see those numbers just pushing up a little bit because Zach Moss is the better between the tackles runner. And I think that's a little more of a classic style that if they want to balance their offense a little bit, that's the guy you go with.
I think my final take on him before we move on to Frankie, I think the other issue that I have with him, just looking at his stats, he doesn't catch the ball anywhere near enough for me to like a guy like that. When I'm taking guys I think are going to break out or guys I think are going to be good flex value, what I like to see, especially with how prevalent PPR and half point is nowadays, is that they present some real receiving volume upside, and you just don't get that with Zach Moss. I mean, he had 18 targets and 14 receptions last season. That's less than a catch a game.
Right, and I said that's why he jumped onto my radar when I saw the beat reporters talking about his catching ability that they've seen already in minicamp. So
sure,
it's all things that I think my summation of this whole thing is that at the end of the day, he's the 100th pick. If you burn a pick on him, the worst thing you have is you just wasted a bench spot.
Fair. Frankie, what about you? Who's your first guy?
Well, I want to talk about a guy that I like a little bit more than Zach Moss. A guy who...
Are you talking about Tannehill?
No.
Oh.
A guy that actually probably saved my fantasy season. Mr. Mike Davis over here. So when CMC went down, we were kind of just like, all right, well, who's the backup in Carolina that's not Curtis Samuel? Because, he's kind of a combo running back, wide receiver guy.
I mean, to that point, Mike Davis had been just a career backup, hadn't really shown any flashes.
Outsteps him. He didn't really blow the doors off her right away, but he put up some okay numbers to start. First 3-game log, 7 points, 15 points. Actually, let's go to 7.5 points, 11 points, 19, 19, 25, 10. Kind of tailed off in the middle of the season. 8, 6, 6, 8. End of the season, pulled it back together a little bit. So he didn't, again, blow the doors off the season, but, he was filling in for a guy who you're used to putting up 20, 30 points a game because that's just the animal that CMC is. Finished at RB 15 and half point, RB 12 in PPR, 8 total touchdowns, just over 1,000 all-purpose yards. I think that considering that now he is the starter and has punched his ticket to Atlanta, who has vacated targets from Julio Jones, they're a team that likes to run a lot of plays. Not even necessarily just throw the ball, but contrary to Zach Moss, he was the 5th most targeted running back last year, only behind McKissick, Zeke, Kamara, and Hines, I believe. I mean, that's, I think, only going to go up. That might be his ceiling, depending how the Falcons want to use him, if they want to kind of use him as that 3-down guy, or if they just want to just run him into the ground and give him all that volume. But you might not necessarily need to increase his through the air work. He didn't rush that much on the ground last year. And I don't think that's because he can't do it. I think it's because, I don't know if there was a trust issue or something, but he was splitting carries with, again, Curtis Samuel, who he is a talented runner. But who else was there? Rodney, what's his last name?
It's on the Falcons or on the
No,
on the Panthers.
Panthers. I'm blanking on the last name. I'll
Right.
look it up in
Rodney
a second.
Smith?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're splitting carries with him. But now the only show in town with him is Quadre Wilson, or I'm sorry if I'm butchering the name, but that's pretty much it. I think he's going to get more volume on the ground this year compared to last year. And, I mean, right now he's ADP 69, so that's round 5 or 6. I mean, I wouldn't have a problem pairing a guy who has shown he can do the job with 2 other running backs, 2 other wide receivers. I don't like him if he climbs anymore.
He wasn't really splitting carries with Curtis Samuel last season either. Curtis Samuel only had 41 carries, which it's a lot for a wide receiver, but it's not that much.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, Mike Davis only had 165.
So before I end up forgetting these names because I have an atrocious memory, the reason I am hesitant to get on Mike Davis on that hype train is because there's 2 guys that come to my mind that is just like, it's like ghosts of fantasy past coming back to me, and it's Zach Stacy and Justin Forsett. Career backups who, when they're given the job, they pop and they finish the year strong. We go to the next year and we're like, all right, let's see if they can keep this up, because sometimes that happens where they just, when you get the opportunity, you can flash. But Mike Davis doesn't feel like that guy to me. Mike Davis feels like the guy who just caught lightning in a bottle, did what he did using basically CMC's play scheme, and now he's on a new team who, yes, I do like the fact that the Falcons went out and acquired him. They wanted him. But I'm not sure if this is not just going to be another, Cinderella, turning back into a pumpkin kind of situation here. And that's why it's like, with his 5th round value, with where people are landing, I often see myself shying away from him and letting other people deal with that. Well, I take, so I usually end up going like a couple running backs early, and then usually in the 5th round, I'm looking at a wide receiver. Just because there's a couple guys that I think have some tremendous upside, and then I'll take a couple running backs later. Like you said, you can take a Damian Harris. I'll take a Zach Moss way later. Like guys like them, where I might even take might even bet against Mike, and I'll just take his backup and see if he flops. I'll just get the guy who eventually takes the starting job from him.
Well, I mean, if you look
sorry, go ahead, Frankie.
I would say, well, if you look at why Zach Stacy flopped, I mean, he started 12 games for the Rams.
Mm-hmm.
He had that pop season, and then the next season he didn't pop because he was backing up Trey Mason.
Yeah, yes. Trey Mason, fantasy superstar.
He was.
Anyone would lose their job to Trey Mason.
They had to go get out one of the best running backs, Todd Gurley, to upstage him.
No, I mean, I do agree with you, Vitaly. I am someone who I've always preached against believing in career backups. And honestly, I'm starting to circle back to that. I was initially on Mike Davis. What made me start to realize that I'm not actually a Mike Davis believer is every time I have the chance to draft him in best ball, I find a reason to draft someone else. Because I don't believe in Mike Davis. I don't believe in a guy that, when given the reins in a high volume rushing offense, only was able to get 165 carries, was only able to average 3.9 a carry. He wasn't efficient with his receiving volume. He got a lot of catches for a running back, but he didn't do anything with them. 6.3 yards per catch. He only fell in the end zone twice. I mean, I'm looking at his game log history. He's been on 4 different teams now in his 5-year career, 6-year career. That's damning. That's almost a new team every year. And kind of what I was getting around to with Zach Moss, but Zach Moss obviously has time on his side still. Mike Davis doesn't. Running backs, if running backs are going to be great, typically running backs pop in their first 3 seasons. We have six of him under his belt, 2 of which he got real opportunity in, and he hasn't done anything with either year really. At this point, I just don't believe in him. I think that we're going to see a lot of that receiving volume go towards Hayden Hurst, who has had longer in that system. He was a proficient pass catcher with the Ravens. Obviously, he didn't do high volume, but he at least looked good with them. There's a reason everyone was excited about that trade. I think we're going to see the volume go to Hayden Hurst, and I think honestly we might see a running back like Adrian Peterson end up on this team, just someone else there to fill the void so they can cycle running backs in and out and keep the carries down, because Mike Davis just is not somebody who is going to be able to turn in consistent carries. If he drops in value, I'm interested in him. In the 5th round, pass. I'll take a wide receiver.
Fair enough.
At least we're not all just proverbially like stroking each other's egos here with these picks. Like I said, I feel like there's sometimes you see a show where everyone's just like, "That's an amazing pick. I love your pick." It's like, sometimes you got to harp on each other.
Well, that's boring television.
Yeah, it says you got to be able to harp at each other and call each other out for things that we see. And like I said, I feel like I felt mostly with Mike Davis that I forgot how many years he did in the league.
He came in 2015.
I know, I thought he was a shorter career than that, and I was just like, I'm getting the ghosts of Justin Forsett there. I didn't realize this was literally just Justin Forsett with a new last name. Like,
No, yeah, this is like he played 15 games for the Seattle Seahawks in 2018, got 112 carries and ran for 514 yards. I just, no disrespect to you, Frankie, but I've done a U-turn on this guy for myself, and I think he's going to be a bomb on someone's roster. Someone's gonna try and get cheeky and take him as their second running back, and he's just gonna put up stinker after stinker.
Oh, I'll take him as my 3rd running back, not as my 2nd running back.
yeah, and like maybe that's the flyer you have to take with how shallow the position is if you can't get somebody else that you really like.
That's the upside.
That's the upside. Is if he's your flex guy, he doesn't hurt you as much.
Well, and if he's still going into the season being the only real name in town, I guess he is still technically a volume upside. It's just like, what's that volume going to turn into?
Yeah.
All right, let me jump over to my second guy here. A much better running back going in almost the same range as Mike Davis. And when I said I keep finding ways to not draft Mike Davis, oftentimes guys that I'm drafting instead of him are named David Montgomery. Because David Montgomery is going 4 running backs ahead of Mike Davis. And I think that's absurd, to put it lightly.
Only 4?
He is currently the running back 20
How?
with an ADP of 38.5. That's the back of the 3rd, middle of the 4th is where you typically see Dave Montgomery kicking around, and that is dumb. I know last season had a lot of injuries at the running back position. Okay, I'm not trying to tell you it didn't. He still finished as the running back 4. You want to know who he was sandwiched between? Kamara, Henry, Cook, Jones. All of them are 1st-round running backs. Oh, 3 of those 4 are top 5 picks in NFL drafts so far this season. I mean,
Well, Aaron Jones is a 2nd-round running back, but
he is a borderline 1st-round running back.
All I want to say right now is just for our fans who have been with us from the beginning, I just want you to remember this moment for when Frankie is doing this take next year. That way you could have made the circle of people saying that why is David Montgomery going so cheap? I ran with the flag last year. You're running with it this year.
I supported it last year though, and honestly, I would have expected with the season he put up that he would have got more respect. He's going in the exact same spot.
Right. That's kind of what I'm saying. Is like David Montgomery, nothing changes about him. Before it was 10 points, 10 points, 10 points.
Well, no.
And then
Something-
last year he changed that.
I was gonna say something did change about him too was the fact that he showed us that he can finish high.
Yeah, and then his draft position's in the same spot. So I feel like he's going to finish as a top 10 running back this year. And then Frankie's going to be talking about why he's such a value. And we're like, weird. I guess it's going to go back to Vitale for his next year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not even trying to tell you that he should be a 1st-round running back. I just I look at the running backs going ahead of him. DeAndre Swift on a terrible team. Like the guy we just talked about, but with more volume and more skill. Doesn't change the fact the Lions are going to be one of the worst teams in football this season. And yet DeAndre Swift is going ahead of him. Chris Carson, old, broken, on a dysfunctional offense, going ahead of him. J.K. Dobbins is the RB2 on his team behind Lamar Jackson, going ahead of him. CEH, who did nothing last season and is just attached to Patrick Mahomes, going ahead of him. Joe Mixon, who has been a trap card for almost his entire career and is just a volume guy, which Dave Montgomery also is. Actually, I think he's safer volume than Mixon is. I think the Bears are going to be a better team than the Bengals were, going ahead of him. There's so many names in the second and third rounds that should not be taken ahead of David Montgomery that are, because it's fun to hate David Montgomery. Because in his first season, the Bears were a dumpster fire strapped to a sinking ship falling into the sun. And he looked bad because the entire team was bad. Mm-hmm. And guess what? He's not Ezekiel Elliott, and he probably never will be, so he can't make money out of nothing. He's not out there he's not early season Adrian Peters or early years Adrian Peterson just strapping a bulldozer to his knees and running forward and just like not mattering how many people he hits because he's going through them. Like he is still always going to be I don't think he's ever going to make it into like the top echelon of running backs. Maybe I'm wrong there, but
I mean, we didn't think Eddie Stacy would, and look what happened.
Eddie Stacy? You mean Eddie Lacy?
Same thing.
Yeah.
Right,
I'm still on Zach Stacy.
I'm saying like I'm not advocating for him going super high. I think honestly the biggest thing keeping him down is the same thing that I said for Zach Moss. The receiving volume isn't there. It's probably never going to be there. They've been talking about him being an improved pass catcher this offseason, but they also went out and they signed Damian Williams. Tariq Cohen's still there. Obviously he's a shell of himself. He's still not recovered from his ACL injury. But between Tariq Cohen and Damian Williams, that's the passing volume for the running back right there.
Yeah.
But, like, Matt Nagy's been talking this offseason about getting David Montgomery at least 20 carries a game. Like, at some point, we need to listen to the head coach. He showed us last season what he wanted to do. He gave David Montgomery volume. David Montgomery turned that volume into fantasy points. Now he's having a great offseason. People are saying he looks great. He's being an improved pass catcher. Matt Nagy wants to get him more touches than he got last season. He averaged 16.5 a game. And we're all like, but is he going to? It's like, yeah, he probably is. He has 2 years of data saying that he's been improving. We need to believe that he is going to be a good running back because, like, otherwise, what are we doing as analysts here if we're not putting him where he deserves to be? This is highway robbery.
I think it's
drafting him at where he's being taken.
I think it might literally be the fact that he doesn't have a sexy name. Like Montgomery,
his name's David Montgomery. He plays for the Bears. The Bears have been bad for a while.
That's
now.
the only thing I can think
and
of.
His coach is Matt Nagy, who likes to play magic tricks with his quarterbacks. Like,
I just think it's asinine. I think it's just people not looking at data and just being like, ha ha, Dave Montgomery's slow. Send tweet.
Well, yeah, it's like, I mean, this is the exact situation we're looking at with Aaron Rodgers, where Aaron Rodgers is like, I'm going to throw 48 touchdowns and 5 picks. What? I'm still going this late? Are you kidding me?
The difference is, at least with quarterback, that's harder to repeat than what Dave Montgomery did. The running back position, stats are like touchdowns obviously are fluky, but stats are a little more repeatable at the running back position as long as the volume is guaranteed. It sounds like the volume is going to be guaranteed, unless we're going to just assume that Matt Nagy's lying to us in June because it's funny. Like, we have to assume that the running back volume is guaranteed. And if that's there, Dave Montgomery is going to be a great running back. He's going to be a second-round running back taken in the 4th round. That is highway robbery.
I will happily take him in the 4th round and pair him in the 5th round.
Also, I like how it seems like we're all on the same page for my picks. Value show goes to me.
all right, I hate David Montgomery now.
Wait, did I say I like David Montgomery?
Value show goes to me.
I mean, this is basically just my take from last year, so I just let you recycle it. Anyways, I believe this would be my pick now.
Yes, and this is one where I am going to back you up here because I love this guy.
Cause man, there were a lot of injuries last year.
There sure were.
There sure were.
I didn't notice.
Are you about to tell us someone who got injuries?
Somebody who got injuries. It's not Saquon Barkley who's still being taken in the 1st round, top 6 pick. It's not CMC who's still the number 1 pick. I'm talking about a guy who was literally going in the top 10 picks, not just top 10 positionally, top 10 picks last year.
I believe his ADP was 5.
Is this the one who punched his teammate?
Yeah, he crept up as high as 5. Mr. Michael Thomas of the New Orleans Saints. He is at ADP 30 right now, the wide receiver 9. He was the one, like the undisputed number 1 last year.
Yeah.
And we're talking about him like, he lost all.
He joined like illustrious other first wide receivers taken, like Antonio Brown and Megatron, as like wide receivers who've gone in the top 5 of fantasy picks.
Like, we all wanted to take him down when he was at that high because, I mean, at that point, there's not much ceiling left for a guy like that, and you want to figure out a reason why you shouldn't take him. But when you're in the middle, like not the top, the middle of the 3rd round, and I've seen as low as the top of the 4th at some points, and you're getting a guy who could just be the wide receiver 1, that doesn't happen much. The last time I can remember is Antonio Brown's breakout season, and then, like you said, so if you're getting a guy who's already broken out and is basically going back into the bargain bin, you don't let that pass you by in the third. Like, I'll wait and I'll get somebody else. Let me go for Juju Smith-Schuster later. I think I'll go for him.
Well, there's such a huge disparity between him and the guys that he's been taking around. Like, this is no disrespect to Keenan Allen or Amari Cooper or any of the guys in that range, but like, Michael Thomas is a better wide receiver than those guys. He's shown that to us time and time again. He has one down season and Drew Brees retires. Everyone's like, well, that's it. Product of his quarterback. Write him off.
Exactly. He's got garbage quarterbacks now, but like every single year since his rookie year, if you exclude last year where he was hurt, and he was hurt so bad that he was telling the coaching staff, the medical staff was saying to the coaches that he couldn't play, but because they were pushing for a Super Bowl, they knew Drew Brees was retiring. He went out there and tried to play and still had an okay. There was a few okay plays, mostly with Taysom Hill, but like when you look at his time with Taysom Hill, he was putting up his career averages, about 85 yards. He just wasn't getting touchdowns. And as if you were a Kamara owner, like some people that are sitting at this table, you know that Taysom Hill was out there vulturing touchdowns like it was his day job. Like he stole like 3-4 touchdowns in those few games, and it was painful. So
I also would like to say, Taysom Hill is a bad quarterback.
Yes.
He's a tight end that can throw the football.
but he can still get it to Michael. So if he somehow ends up over Jameis Winston, he can still get the ball to Michael Thomas.
I would hate it, but I would love to see it because I want to hate it because it's bad.
Yes, it's a terrible choice. That's why I put clearly in the likely scenario that Jameis Winston hopefully is the quarterback. Like that just raises his ceiling through the roof. But like I was saying, after he broke out, he was getting over 140 targets a year, 120 in his rookie season. He got 80 the year he was hobbled. So clearly there's a precedent to they really want to use him.
Sure.
They got rid of a lot of their passing options in the offseason. They had to leave because they were over the cap. So now it's just Kamara and Thomas, the only people who can really catch the ball on that team. Because after that, who is it?
Traquan Smith is he? No, I will say Traquan Smith is being discounted. He is I think a better deep ball guy than people give him credit for. But Traquan Smith is like a 4 or 5 target a game guy. Like Mike Wallace of old, where you just take shots at him and see if he can break one off for a 75-yard touchdown.
Yeah, I do like Traquan Smith.
Like he's not going to be a major impact on Kamara and Thomas's target volume. He is just he's like a splash player. He's great for the team. I don't know how useful he's going to be for fantasy managers, but
Right. So
and he's number 3.
right, he's number 3.
Oh, Adam Troutman, don't forget about him.
Yeah, like that's the reason why Adam Troutman's getting pumped, because they're like, oh, these balls have to go somewhere. So it's like people are forgetting how many balls that Kamara and Thomas themselves are committed to. And then on top of that, if we put Jameis Winston back there,
they're
Jameis
forgetting
Winston with eyes.
Well, so in my opinion, at least from kind of looking at Michael Thomas, trying to diagnose why he is where he is, I think it's a combination of public perception, where he had a bad season last year. Drew Brees left, and it's sort of the sky is falling around the Saints because this kind of organizational destabilization hasn't happened to them in a long time.
Yeah,
because Drew Brees has been there since the Superdome was put up. It feels like, but I feel like it's a combination of that, the injury, and then just the fact that there's built-in regression for him off of his 2019 season, where he had 185 targets and 1,700 yards or whatever it was.
That's a lot of
targets. Because obviously he's probably not going to do that again. But I mean, I'm looking at let me pull up his stat log right here. Like looking at his stat log, yeah, 1,725 yards in 2019. Looking at his year-to-year stats, if he regresses by 40 targets and comes back to $145, he's still catching 125 of them and going 1,400 yards and 9 touchdowns, which is still like a top 3 wide receiver in football.
Yeah, and that's where he would be drafted. Like, you look at the guys that Jameis Winston was able to carry, like Mike Evans, every year in the second. And as soon as Chris Godwin broke out, he was just a must-have, like, in the second. But
Yeah.
for some reason now that he has a guy who's, you can make an argument that he's better than both of them, he's going in the middle of the third and pushing backwards. Like, it makes no sense to me. This is an offense that's far better built than the Buccaneers ever were, with a better line, better coaching, everything there. And Jameis has eyes now, as I said. So when you look at, like I say, I love looking at Chris Godwin because Chris Godwin has similar play style to Michael Thomas. I just think Michael Thomas, right now at least, he's better than Chris Godwin. So if you look at how good Chris Godwin was with Jameis Winston on an inferior team, there's no reason why you can't take that data and look at it and be like, wow, Michael Thomas is probably going to be very good this year.
He's similar to Dave Montgomery. I firmly believe he's going to be a massive steal for whoever gets him, because you're getting a guy that should be a late first, early second round pick in like the late third, early fourth, and then to be able to get something like that means that you get to pair him
With two good running
with
backs.
with two first and second round picks. You get to pair him with,
Chubb and Eckler.
Nick Chubb and Austin Eckler. Or you get to pair him with, Cam Akers and DeAndre Hopkins. And there's the teams that you're going to be able to assemble with values like this, assuming they last, are honestly kind of gross.
Right.
Yeah.
So when I was looking, I was like, technically, so if you guess right in the running back and you're in the first round and you wrap around the second, you're a tight end early truther. You take Travis Kelce. There is a world where you could have the RB, tight end, and wide receiver 1, 2, 3 in the first 3 rounds.
I mean, Travis Kelce sneak into the first round, so probably not. But
like I said, you'd have to get a little lucky here. But I'm just like, it's not that far out of the realm of possibility if you have a league that is anti-tight end.
sure.
That you could have a running back, a tight end, and wide receiver all be the number ones at their position on your team, and it's not that huge.
I mean, a very realistic team, if you're targeting Michael Thomas, is you take Derrick Henry in the first round, and then you take, Antonio Gibson in the second, J.K. Dobbins in the third, and Michael Thomas in the fourth.
Yeah.
Or you don't take 3 running backs right out of the gates because you don't like running back depth because you think that's boring, and you take Derrick Henry, DeAndre Hopkins, J.K. Dobbins, and then Michael Thomas, and you have potentially the wide receiver 1 and 2 in football, and some very good running backs to back them up.
Exactly.
Like it's kind of crazy.
I'm waiting for
Frank, you look like you have something to say. What are you looking to chirp up about over there?
No, that's pretty much what I was gonna say. It
had to be said. I don't want to say it because I don't want his price to skyrocket, but please draft this man.
Yeah. Like I said, I think the weirdest thing about it too is that
I'm just
the
saying,
ADP right now is reflecting live drafts that are going on, and that's not very many. Once the public comes in, we typically see values skew one way or the other. I think he's going to be someone who probably starts skewing the other because the casual fan is going to come in looking at thinking about all of the negative press from last year and the injury from last year and Drew Brees gone, because there is a large amount of people that do either none or very cursory amounts of research, and it's just going to be like, well, I don't want Michael Thomas, who's his quarterback.
well,
So he's either going to stagnate or drop, in my opinion, and be just a boon for someone on draft day.
I think it's more of going to be I'm the opinion it's going to go to the other way, but I think it's more from the he's down here. Why is he down here? I don't care enough to do enough research. There's a reason why he's down here.
Sure, yeah, it's the group thing too. You're everyone else is avoiding him, and you don't know why, but you don't want to be the idiot that takes him and finds out he's a torn ACL or something. Is you just keep avoiding him.
Yep.
Yeah, or you could be like Kevin and draft a coach.
Sure, yeah. All right, Frankie, take us away with your final pick.
Well, we started with the quarterback. We're going to end with the quarterback. And this is a guy that we did bring up roughly. Ryan Tannehill. He's kind of going into last season. And, I was worried about his throwing volume. I actually think he might have been one of my busts last year, now that I'm thinking about it. Or at least someone I was skittish on.
Frankie, are you allowed to have Titans as busts? I thought that you're too high on all of them to actually ever list any of them doing anything wrong.
No, I remember talking about how he was only throwing the ball like 23 times a game. Wasn't on a team that at that point threw a lot. It pretty much ran through Derrick Henry. But this past year, I called it on AJ Brown, and while Derrick Henry did see a career year in volume and production, I think it's less running through Derrick Henry now as like a whole offense.
Running around him?
Yeah.
He does set that entire offense. When you have to designate enough defenders to actually slow down Derrick Henry, in a game plan, that means that you are pulling defenders off of the receiving options, which allows Tannehill to have a catch with his son in the backfield or
Like when a lot of defenders will say, when you have a guy that's that big punching you in the mouth all game long, you get tired of defending and you start making lapses in other spots.
And Tannehill has that out of the backfield and at the wide receiver position.
Yeah. The Titans in general.
And he just got Julio Jones too.
Yeah. the Titans last year in general just looked like, honestly, one of the best teams in football. They ran 100 more plays. I think they do want to be one of that more up-tempo offenses. Their defense looked better, at least from the passing side. The rushing, not so much, but can't be perfect. With my breakout sweetheart, AJ Brown, kind of taking that leap forward that I thought he was going to take. I'm sorry, guys, I can't include you in that.
Yeah,
But
I was actually against him.
I was in
you
the AJ
were
Brown
in the
camp.
middle.
I was in the AJ Brown camp last season.
Anyways, it is not a stretch to say that, regardless of injury, that Julio Jones for Corey Davis is a pretty good swap out for the Titans.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to tell you that Julio Jones isn't more talented than Corey Davis.
We saw Tannehill's numbers all go up. He put 40 through the air and on the ground. 7 of those being rushing touchdowns, which kind of puts him, for me, in that like gray area for rushing quarterbacks. He didn't have that many yards, but he is definitely still somebody who can run the ball if needed. And again, I'm not saying that you're going to get a guy who's going to pop. Like I don't think he might have the 40 touchdown ceiling. I don't think we're going to see it. But you're getting a guy with a very safe floor based on the offense that he's in. Kind of similar, I guess. It kind of reminds me of the Chiefs without the 50 touchdown upside. But I'm way more comfortable paying for a guy who might throw, well, we'll call it, say he does the same thing as last year, 33, gets maybe like 5 or 6 on the ground. I'm comfortable with picking that up in the 3rd round. Not 3rd round, 10th round. Versus a guy like Mahomes, Lamar, Kyler, Dak, who I'm going to have to pay that high draft capital for when I can pick up a guy like a Michael Thomas, or, if Mahomes going high, swap him out for DeAndre Hopkins, Robert Woods. I'm much more comfortable pairing a wide receiver or another running back with a guy who I'm going to get later. And if I can get AJ Brown and stack the two, I mean, stacking's not as important in redraft, but if
I was looking at this when I was statting out the Titans, and I actually projected Tannehill to take a pretty major step forward this season for a couple of reasons. One, you look at his 2 seasons with Tennessee, he did start 10 games for them and played 12 in 2019. And he didn't throw that much. He looked good for the games he was in there, but he didn't throw that much. Compared to 2019, he threw a ton in 2020. But Derrick Henry still had a ton of volume. Now, the Titans aren't a dumb organization. They know that they have given Derrick Henry, honestly, way too many carries in the last 2 years.
Yep.
Honestly, for a couple of factors. One, I think them trading for Julio Jones is showing their hand a little bit. You don't trade for a receiver like Julio if you're not going to throw. And then on top of that, they're probably looking at this, seeing Derrick Henry's been getting a lot of volume. They need him to make their offense function. I don't think they're going to overfeed him this season. He's still going to be, get fed enough to be great because he's Derrick Henry. But I think you're going to see Derrick Henry's rushing attempts come down this season a pretty significant amount. Back to the realm of mortal first round running backs.
Yeah.
And you're going to see Tannehill go up over 500 attempts because he needs to. They need to throw the ball more. They need to use these 2 massive receivers they have and create mismatches out there for defensive backs and linebackers and whoever's trying to cover these guys, and make it so they can move the ball that way to take some of the workload off of Derrick Henry. I won't be surprised. I don't have my rankings in front of me, but I think I had him somewhere for around like 4,400 yards and like high 30s touchdowns. Like I won't be surprised at all though if he overperforms that and goes over 40 touchdowns, goes over 4,500 yards. If he flirts with 5,000, we could see him putting up massive passing volume because he has one of the best wide receiver duos in the league. And as we've seen with other teams, that's kind of all it takes to succeed sometimes is be a halfway decent quarterback and have 2 all-stars out there.
Yeah, it's like, what are they going to do?
2 future first-ballot Hall of Famers.
Are they going to double cover both of them?
Then Derrick Henry just runs forward.
Yeah,
because the Titans play a lot of play action, and the play action sets up their passing game really well because you have to respect Derrick Henry's play action.
Yeah,
if you don't, he's going to actually give Derrick Henry the ball, and Derrick Henry's going to rush for 15 yards.
Yeah, it is crazy to think of the 3 guys that could be running this offense, and I think the thing I do like when I'm looking at these late round quarterbacks, I end up shying towards Brady and Rodgers more. But I feel like Tannehill's that guy. You could be like the last guy to get your quarterback, and it will be Tannehill, and you could be very happy with it. Like, I think this is the reason why we have to kind of push this theory a lot more for people. It's like, if you're in a league and people are high on quarterbacks, let them take the shiny names, let them waste their picks up top, and then you can just have Tannehill. And because you got Tannehill, you can have all the running backs and wide receivers and tight ends you want, and some backups in case they get hurt.
Sure.
While your friends are sitting there like, well, I got Travis Kelce and I got Lamar Jackson, but I have like Melvin Gordon is my running back too. So you're just sitting there like, man, I wish I had a running back right now. It's like, well, it's been a couple weeks. So I can give you one of mine that I'm not using for Lamar Jackson maybe.
I mean, yeah, that is the other thing you can do is you can always trade up later in the season. You know, if Tannehill isn't performing,
Yeah.
quarterbacks are generally easier to trade for than other positions.
Yeah, like I said, because their value is lower, because the gap is different. But when you're at the end of the season, you need every single point to try and get you that championship. Yeah, those elite quarterbacks matter more. But if the team who drafted them is looking at they're about to lose and they'll trade anything to just get into the playoffs, you can be like, Pat Mahomes, he can score you 50, but your running back's going to score you 5. I'll hand you a guy who can score you 15. Here's David Montgomery, and I'll give you Tannehill, who's a quality quarterback, and you give me Patrick Mahomes back.
Sure. No, but like I said, I do agree with you though, Frankie. I think he's a value. I think he's a good guy to target if you miss Rodgers and Brady. You're looking at either him or Stafford in my mind at that point. But I love that Tennessee offense. He's like, man, that offense is a lot of shiny toys.
They might have one. Actually, I might like them the best in football.
It's easy to see why, because you can make a case for them having the best running back and the best 2 wide receivers. Like,
Hey, don't sleep on Anthony Firsker.
a pretty solid offensive line too. I mean, we saw them create lots of gaps, make good protection for Tannehill. I mean, I think if Julio showed me more health last season, I would be much more, because that's my big concern is can Julio make it through a year. But outside of that, I mean, this offense could be scary to watch if assuming health, they could do some damage to the league.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, I think that'll do it for all of our value plays. Tune in next week when we bring you our boom players of the season. Guys that we think, unlike value plays, are just slam dunk must-have players regardless of price. We can do 2 each, I think, for that also. And
Just say Michael Thomas.
I was going to say, I feel like there's going to be an echo chamber of Michael Thomas in the room.
Myco Thomas?
Yes, Michael Thomas.
Myco Thomas. Micro Thomas.
Hey, so guys, if you like the content that we're putting out, support the show. You know, our links are all up here. Our individual social links are down here.
You do have to update my Twitter handle, Frankie. It is now fantasy4p_Ian.
Ian's social link is not right there, so don't pay attention when I point to it.
But you can find me by going through the show page, as well as following either of these fine gentlemen and finding me in their follower lists. It's not the longest list well, maybe Frankie it is, but
like, comment, subscribe, shoot us a question if you have any.
Always be sure to share the videos too. Eyeballs help.
I'm not good with this show host thing.
I'm
gonna leave that to you.
Getting eyeballs in the videos helps. The more eyeballs we get and the more view time we get, the more YouTube thinks that we're doing good, and then the more YouTube thinks we're doing good, the more our videos get propped up in the algorithm, which means that we get more viewers, and eventually if we get enough viewers, we get to put out even more quality content for you guys.
Yeah.
And that is the goal here, especially as we go into draft season, try and help you guys win all of your leagues as hard as possible. Except for you, Garrett, you're going to lose.
And Will.
And Frankie.
All right. Well, that'll do it for us. See you guys next time.